in the UK and elsewhere in the world, economists keep a watchful eye on the powerful United States economy and any changes. After all, the saying is that when the USA sneezes, Europe catches a cold. Welcome to this BVTV Be Prepared Trilogy, coming to you from the UK Studios of BizVision. I'm your host, Malcolm Gallagher. In my mind, that eye on the US economy that I've just mentioned has usually been more guesswork than true understanding. My guest today brings a very pragmatic understanding with his latest book, this one, called Navigating the Boom-Bust Cycle, an Entrepreneur's Survival Guide. So let's meet Dr. Murray Sabrin. Hello, Murray.
Hello, Malcolm. Great to be with you today. I miss being in London since we were there in 1970 for the first time.
We've moved on since then. We've conquered the world since then, Murray. We were just getting rid of one old empire and starting another. You do realize that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, you're lovely and warm in Florida today, I believe. Is that correct?
Well, today's a little bit cool. It's still in the 60s. We've had a heat wave this month. We've had record temperatures in the mid to upper 80s, which is very unusual for this time of year in Florida. Usually the high temperature is in the mid 70s, which I call summer 2.0. In the summertime, it gets into the 90s plus, but in the wintertime, it cools down to the 70s. To me, this is ideal weather. I would not trade it for anything in the world today.
I totally agree with you. I'll be there next year. I'm fed up of the cold. Murray, the pandemic has hit the world's economies. Now, the supply chain situation is hurting. Climate change is causing all kinds of economic concerns. And now inflation seems to be threatening. Let's start your trilogy by asking you to give us a grounding in inflation insights. What do we need to know and why?
Well, inflation has been around, I guess, since governments took control of money, going back to the Roman Empire, where they clipped the silver coins, diluted the metal content of coins. And then through the evolutionary process of money and banking, we got money substitutes, paper money. And those were supposed to be backed by precious metals because that's what the market wanted. They wanted something of value. And the textbooks tell us what money should be. And paper is not money. It's a money substitute. Well, through a long process, the United States got the Federal Reserve in 1913. And since then, we've been in boom-bust cycles for 100 plus years. And it's going to continue as long as the people in charge at the Fed and the economists who advise them think that the best way to manage an economy is to determine what the interest rate should be on short-term funds and to pump money in order to, quote, stimulate the economy. And that, to me, is a fool's errand because all it does, as I point out in my book, is create the boom-bust cycle, which, of course, can be very painful on the bust side for many people, including small businesses.
Yeah. I totally take your point. The other week, I was talking with Howard Crosby, who's actually the nephew of Bing Crosby. And he was talking about his uncle way ago and talking about how bad inflation was, and Howard is very much against it. So there is a lot of thought that amongst people today, isn't there, that that inflation is deceiving us.
Well, it's what I call a distortion, because in a free market economy, Malcolm, the beauty of a free market economy, which benefits everyone, is that prices slowly fall as wages either stay the same or rise slightly, which means living standards increase for everybody who's working. And that's why I'm so passionate about the notion that the central bankers don't understand a very fundamental concept of how an economy works, namely that prices should be falling, which of course I've seen in my lifetime since the 1950s, and more recently with all the innovations that have taken place that increase productivity in so many sectors where prices would be coming down greater than they have been, increasing living standards. So the Federal Reserve effectively blocks the natural course of the economy, and in the process hurts the average wage earner.
Yeah. Now, you're not shy of being a little bit, should we say, abrasive at times. One book, as I think it was something about Fed sucks. I think you correct me in a moment there. But I just wanted to know, what do you think people should be doing about it, apart from obviously getting your book and understanding, because that's the first part, understanding. What do you think people should be doing about this rampant inflation that we're all sort of facing at the moment, or worrying about at the moment?
Well, the last time we had a major inflation cycle in the United States, Malcolm, was from the mid-'60s to the early '80s. That was a 16-year cycle, and people had to really scramble in order to stay ahead of the cost of living. And back then, interest rates were higher than the rate of inflation. Today, interest rates are much lower than the rate of inflation. So that means if you have money in a bank trying to earn a decent rate of interest to compensate for the cost of living increases or the decline of the purchasing power of the dollar, you are really behind the eight ball. So what I've been suggesting to people, we don't know what the rate of inflation will be in 2022. I suspect it's going to be higher than 2021. Is that you can buy things that have a long shelf life, because if things are going to go up 5-10% this year, and if you buy it today, you're earning 5-10% on the money that you spent on items that if you leave it in the bank, you're losing 5% because we're getting zero rate of return on it. So one way is preempting the inflation, price inflation, by buying ahead of price increases in the economy.
Yeah. Now, you're a great and deep thinker. What, apart from knowing the purpose of writing this book, and I think I've got that from you, what did you want to be the outcome or the impact of this book?
Well, this is the interesting point. I mean, basically, this is a guide for entrepreneurs. As you know, entrepreneurs don't have much time to read 500-page books. So I wrote a book that is easy to read. You could read it probably in one day if you have the time set aside. And it takes you through why we have inflation, what are the strengths and weaknesses of the type of economies we have, and depending upon what type of business you have, what you should be looking for in order to navigate the boom-bust cycle. And again, one of the, I think, important pieces of advice I have for businesses is that during the downturn in the economy, a lot of businesses get caught short because they don't have enough working capital. And therefore, during a boom time, they should be putting money aside in case when the economy does turn down, they have some resources to tide them over during the bust cycle so they can survive the next cycle.
Yeah. Thanks, Murray. Now, let's give viewers and listeners details of your URL, your website address, which obviously viewers you can see on the screen behind me. But for listeners, let me spell it out. It's all the W's, Murray, which is Murray, Murray, Sabrin, which is Sabrin, murraysabrin.com. Murray's book, this one, is called Navigating the Boom Bust Cycle, an Entrepreneur's Survival Guide. It's published by Business Expert Press. In episode 2, I'm going to ask Murray to take us further into his inflation thinking and tell us more about his book. For now, Murray, thanks for episode 1.
Thank you, Malcolm. Appreciate the opportunity.